Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin, Alex Wolf, an epic win for your Knicks and OG Anunoby's debut. We talked that. Julius Randle's clutch finish to cap off a 39-point evening, and the New York Knicks looking and playing big.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. If you want to become an everydayer, why wouldn't you? With OG Anunoby on the team, it's a cool world now, Alex, and we get to talk about it 5 days a week. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and hit the notifications bell to ensure you never miss an episode. And then be sure to do the same on the audio side of things in case you're on the move. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website on earth. You can check out all their work on all forms of social media at thestrick.land. Alex, we can't delay the inevitable any longer, nor could the Timberwolves. After a spirited comeback, they ultimately fall 112-106 to the New York Knicks. They overcame a 22-point deficit spurred on by a 38-17 second quarter for the Knicks. A lot of OG Anunoby magic there. And then Julius Randle carries the Knicks home down the stretch.
Yeah, the Julius shotmaking, which we'll talk about a little more in depth, was so huge to this team in this game. Like, things were really looking bad. I mean, Brunson, he set a career high, very quietly set a career high for assists in this game with 14, which you wouldn't have realized because otherwise you're kind of just going like, oh, man, can you please make a shot today? Like, it was brutal for him, missing a lot of looks that he normally gets and, just all in all, not looking comfortable. So Randle really stepped up down the stretch, especially exacerbated by the fact that, like, OG Anunoby won all of his minutes. I mean, he was amazing for them in this game. Gave them so many different looks on both ends of the ball, which was awesome. And then he's getting used to that New York whistle, got fouled out with 4 minutes to go on one of the most egregiously ticky-tack foul calls for a sixth foul I've ever seen in my life. So not a super great ending to the OG Anunoby game, but Randle luckily was there to step up in the scoring department. And the team as a whole, I mean, I think played pretty solid defense down the stretch. I mean, honestly, for all of what the comeback was, like, they played pretty good defense during all that. They just couldn't score. That was the big issue. Like, the Timberwolves were just chipping and chipping and chipping and chipping in that second half, and the Knicks just didn't have any answers offensively until Randle just turned on the Jets late. Made some really impressive Melo-esque kind of turnaround fadeaway jumpers, and had one that took like a really favorable bounce off the rim and hit back rim and then went in. I mean, just lovely stuff to see from him, and exactly what the Knicks needed to close this game out in one where, again, Jalen Brunson, despite ending up with 16 points total, I mean, it took him how many? 23 shots to get there. 5 of 23 shooting, 1 of 9 from 3. So they desperately needed what they got from Randle in this game, and he was clutch. But OG Anunoby too, I thought he had as big of an impact just with what he did on both ends of the floor throughout this whole game, I think, to ultimately getting the Knicks this win.
Yeah, I've talked all season. For anyone, I'm sure we have a lot of new listeners, and welcome if you're a new listener. But I've talked all season about the Knicks just struggling against size, and in a way that felt intractable and a fatal flaw, I think is the way to put it, where they got overwhelmed by the Pelicans early. They got overwhelmed by the Celtics at times, the Bucks, these same Minnesota Timberwolves. What was it? A 23-point loss where they just looked disastrous after a hot shooting first half that went away. And this team bodied them and bullied them. And there was no answer to be found. And you snap your fingers, first game of the OG Anunoby era. And what stood out to me, Alex, more than anything else, is just the solidity of this team. And I think what Tom Thibodeau was always searching for when he would replace Emmanuel quickly with RJ Barrett, but he wouldn't quite get it because despite the fact that RJ's big and strong, OG is bigger, stronger, and a world's better defender. And to me, just the Knicks' ability to hold up to a hyper-physical Minnesota team that came in leading the Western Conference, that came in as easily the best defense in basketball, and the Knicks just matched them punch for punch. And of course, that was punctuated by Julius Randle, one of the most physically imposing players in the league. I would say having the most physically dominant season of his career, doing almost everything in the paint with his three-point shot, abandoning him, ending this game in that fashion. But that tone was set initially by OG, and particularly what he did on defense guarding Anthony Edwards. And frankly, even more impressive maybe than what he did on Edwards was him flying around off the ball, and how that inspired everyone else on this Knicks team.
Yeah, I think the other thing too with OG that I noticed, and this is part a strength thing and part just a pure athleticism thing, but he plays so much more above the rim than RJ
Yeah.
Barrett did. And that was huge for them. I mean, there were a couple opportunities where OG got the ball on, like, it was a pretty crowded paint. You know, he got it from, I think it was from DiVincenzo one time, and then from maybe DiVincenzo the second time too, or maybe Josh Hart. I forget, but some people got like stranded on the inside, and then OG makes a cut, and those guys are occupied with the guy that they're guarding, but also like in position that, like, if you don't go up strong, you're not going to get that. And OG just stretched those 7'3" long, arms up there and went up for the dunk, and he makes it look really effortless. And that's a level of athleticism that the Knicks don't have at all other than him, really. I mean, there's not many plus athletes on this team, like Quickly and RJ, as much as we love them. All the guys on the Knicks played pretty much exactly the same, which is a very ground bound, like, safe style of basketball, which
I'd say Randle on the right night, I think, gives you some of that.
That's true. That's true. But not quite like with
No.
OG, it looked effortless. I mean, just the cuts in and the dunks he was hitting. That stood out huge to me as far as something new that the Knicks are getting here. And then just the consistency from three. He didn't even take that many. Like, he took 6 threes and made 3 of them. But, like, yeah, right from the beginning, he makes the first one, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is what it feels like. Like, this is different. Like, he's not going to take 8 of these a game and make 2 anymore. Not to, like, I don't want to make this all about ragging on RJ Barrett, but there were a lot of things that RJ did not do well on this team and in this offense that OG did, like, a simplified version of, while also playing world-class defense. And it made all the difference for the Knicks. Like, he wasn't entrusted to handle the ball as much. He wasn't entrusted to, part of that's, like, it's his first day on the job with a new team, but I think that he knows what his role is and plays it super efficiently. And he got to do a little bit more, I think, than maybe what he would have been entrusted to do with Toronto, as far as handling the ball and stuff. But in the end, just kind of took the opportunities he was given early. The second he got settled in, which I think took about like 2 or 3 minutes, got settled in, and then it was just off to the races from there. And I thought that he just had a super fantastic game on both ends.
Oh man, I'm in total agreement with you. I think that, I mean, I guess the finishing is what stood out to me more than anything else as well. Like, to your point, when was the last time a Knick had 3 dunks in a game? And maybe Mitchell Robinson at some point, but not named Mitch, like a wing. RJ maybe once or twice in his career, and OG does it in his very first game. And they were loud dunks. Like, it's not that he can fly, but it's that he's going up through contact. It's not like he got an and one on any of them, but there are people like bumping his hips, and he was in traffic, and he was still able to elevate like that. And so many times you see the Knicks get into good position because they're so scrappy, they're so physical, like the Josh Harts, DiVincenzo's just digging and battling around the rim. But those guys, like Josh Hart, can do it on the run, but from a stationary position, those plays are typically not finished. Even Hartenstein has issues with that. And for OG, to your point, like over and over again, he was doing it. I love that play to end the first quarter where they ran him out of the corner, and teams are going to be so aggressive doing that because he is one of the best corner 3-point shooters in the NBA, shooting, I think 46% from there this season. And he just makes a great play, right? Dribbles it out, like bounce pass over to, I think it was Hart for the buzzer beater to end the first quarter. And it looks like a simple play, but again, it's functional in a way that RJ largely was not. And obviously you don't want to rag on him, but I think that's how you have to watch this, just seeing what the Knicks lost and what they gained. And it's just all these possessions that don't get used up because OG, every shot tonight, like, was there one shot he took that you had an issue with? Like, I don't think there was a single one.
No, not at all. I mean, I thought that he was uber efficient, did exactly, like, just did what came within the flow, made some smart passes out of, situations, made the extra pass a couple times. And didn't really get rewarded in the assist column, but I thought that he was well within the flow of the offense there. And then just, I mean, actually, this is maybe a good opportunity to throw us to our first little break here, but I want to talk about too him with DiVincenzo. I thought was some of the best minutes that the Knicks had in this game because they play really well off one another. It's like they have very symbiotic strengths on offense where both of them are looking to cut all the time, but also keep their eyes open for that extra pass if they're cutting and they don't have an avenue to get all the way in. And then on top of it, on defense, there was so much of just like OG bottling Anthony Edwards or whoever he was covering up. And then DiVincenzo being right there waiting for that pass to get out of that guy getting bottled up, taking it and running with it in transition. It was really beautiful to see. I don't know, maybe I kind of just covered the whole point there. But at any rate, I think we should take our first little break. And Gavin, if you wouldn't mind, would you let everybody know about our good friends over at FanDuel?
Absolutely, Alex. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook right now. New customers get 150 wow, in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and more. Alex, you're the parlay king. I keep it a little bit more simple. I look at those NBA championship odds and say, man, I know Mark Stein reported to the contrary, throwing a little water on the flames. But what if the Knicks get Donovan Mitchell for a whole bunch of picks? They're plus 4,000 to win the title right now. All I'm going to tell you is those odds are going to be a lot better. I would get in early and throw some money down on your New York Knicks to win an NBA championship. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right. OG Anunoby, I just wanted to put kind of a punctuation mark on it. I'm going to get into my thoughts on him and DiVincenzo because I thought the one play they had was brilliant, but just defensively, I mean, I thought early on Minnesota did a really nice job screening him and kind of getting him separated from Anthony Edwards' bodies. Obviously, Gobert, one of the better screen setters in basketball, is our boss, famously celebrated for a long time, Alex. But then as the game went on, like OG got better and better and better at battling through those screens, finding a way to stick on Edwards' body. And like on both ends of the floor, had two of the biggest plays of the game when the Wolves went on that long run. I think it was 10-0 to start the fourth quarter, ultimately cutting a 16-point lead to 6. OG was the guy who hit the three on what was a laser of a cross-court pass from Brunson. And then I think it was the very next possession, just picture-perfect defense on Anthony Edwards to force the throwaway that Brunson ultimately came up with and then threaded the needle to Randle for a running layup. Like the three-person synergy between those guys, as the Knicks knew, quote-unquote mid-three, as I'm sure others will say, it was big tonight to help knock off the best team in the Western Conference. Of course, he fouled out with 4:12 left in the game. Two kind of soft fouls to end was a bummer, and you give all the credit in the world to the Knicks for holding on, and a lot of that credit can be attributed, maybe almost all of it, to the incredible, I'm going to say two-way play of Julius Randle, because he had some big stops on Karl Anthony Towns late, playing with 5 fouls on top of those just ridiculous shots to carry the Knicks home.
Yeah, I mean, he really kind of had his way with that matchup, with the Towns matchup. I mean, Towns got hardly any rebounds too. I mean, he ended with 6 boards, but going into like, I know this because I played a same game parlay. Shout out to FanDuel, and Towns did not hit his rebounds, but he had like 2 rebounds going into the fourth quarter. And Randle was a large part of that. I mean, he was just dedicated to getting a body on him the entire game, making him uncomfortable that way. As you said, played really good defense on him, not through. I mean, like Randle loses out in the length department a bit to Cat, obviously, because Cat's a true 7-footer, but he did a really good job of just out-strengthening him and just saying, well, you're not going to get close to the hoop, so you're going to have to just be a shot maker today. And sort of just like, I don't know. I know there was a lot of talk. We've had talks for years, probably no more, about potentially like what would happen if you swap Julius Randle for Karl Towns on this team. And this game showed me like, man, it would be kind of a struggle because he just does not like the difference between those two as far as how they play the game and how they approach it and like how willing they are to get all the way inside and stuff like that. That was ultimately what won Julius that matchup, and what won him that fourth quarter was that he was willing to get down and dirty, get in there, like throw his shoulder into Cat. And like Cat's like not small, but he was not playing particularly strong on Randle. And so Randle just kind of shoved him off a number of times and then just went up and made a layup. And that's sort of the difference between those two players, I guess. And, you know, that was how Randle was able to absorb just having an average showing from three for him, you know, shooting 2 of 6 was he was just like, well, I'm the strongest guy on the court right now. Or, you know, if you take Gobert out of the equation, which we'll have to shout out Isaiah Hartenstein in a second because he 100% took Gobert out of this entire game. I mean, he was dominant. But Randle, you know, that just was the matchup to watch for me right from the start. And the fact that Randle won that so handily, especially in the fourth, was totally what won the Knicks the game.
Absolutely. And I want to circle back to the first, because to your point, OG, like a little bit slow on the acclimation. Jalen Brunson, at least scoring the ball, slow the entire night, never got going in any meaningful fashion. And Randle just carried the Knicks, right? 14 of their first 20 points, ended up with 8 free throws in the first half. And the Knicks, there was just a feeling like that they could have gotten run out of the building early when Minnesota, what was it, a 12-0 run? I'm gonna double check it right now. It was a 16-1 run to end the first quarter. And it would not have been that close, except for the fact that Julius Randle was scalding when everyone else in the Knicks could not make a shot to save their lives. And it was all physicality early. To your point, it was like, I mean, he was making smart passes, but just going right at whether it was McDaniels, whether it was Towns, like into their body, creating space, finishing, getting to the line. I mean, Karl Towns had 4 fouls halfway through the third quarter. Like, he just really didn't have an answer. And then it felt like Julius, like I even tweeted this, like he lost his legs a little bit, had 2 different air ball threes. And I was kind of saying, man, he's been playing so hard, been playing so well. Even defensively, I thought like pretty solid effort from him tonight. Like even before like the late stretch against Towns. And then to finish the game, the shot clock buzzer beater straight on, the turnaround fade. That last drive was amazing, where Edwards nearly knocked it away from him. And then he found a lane, got right in, finished with the and one around 3 different Timberwolves. I mean, this was Julius Randle's magnum opus. Like, whatever you want to rank his top 3 to 5 games as a Knick, I think it's hard to argue that this isn't in there. And I know I said that about the Raptors game recently, but what a turnaround for a guy, Alex, that we, for about the 15th billionth time, we're ready to trade away earlier this season. I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to go Hartenstein next? Because I think maybe 3 rejections and manhood championship contest wins against Rudy Gobert deserves an early mention in this podcast.
Yeah, I think let's just real quick take our second break and let everybody know about PrizePicks, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about Isaiah Hartenstein, about a great bounce back effort from Quentin Grimes in this game, and we can talk through Josh Hart's night, Dante DiVincenzo, and more, how everybody fit with OG Anunoby, but right after we let everybody know about PrizePicks. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with PrizePicks, but it's one of my favorite places to play daily fantasy sports. In fact, let me just say my favorite place to play daily fantasy sports. It's the easiest and most exciting way to do it. You can engage against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. And all you have to do is pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch your winnings roll in. And if you want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like Meek Mill or comedian Andrew Scholes, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. Maybe there'll even be some New York personalities in there. Meek Mill, famously Philly guy. So, or you could beat Meek Mill. That's cool because he's from Philly. PrizePicks also offers a reboot policy, so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if you've ever played fantasy sports, you know injuries are the biggest killer. But for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return to the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. On top of that, it's really simple to play. You can make picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds, and you get quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. On top of that, you can also make multi-sport entries too. So if you follow multiple sports, you can make an entry that covers like 6 different sports in one single entry if you want to, and pick 6 different over-unders. It's a really fun way to play daily fantasy sports. So head to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, and we're back in, Gavin, and it is Isaiah Hartenstein time, man. He had a heck of a game, way more than what I think the stat column shows here. And I guess the stat column is not that, it's not that modest, but like 7 points, 9 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks. That's big man numbers right there. Those 3 blocks were so impressive. I mean, that was the best part. One of the best parts of this game to me was just watching him say no to one of the longest and, quite frankly, strongest players in the NBA in Rudy Gobert, and just say, hey, you think that you're the block master here? Like, that's me today. Like, you're not going to do anything on offense because I've decreed it. Just a phenomenal effort there. Also, I think did a really good job of keeping him off the glass as much as could be reasonably expected. Like, Gobert ended with 15 boards, but I thought that like he only had 2 offensive boards, which is very helpful, and that's somewhere where he could have really killed the Knicks. And the Timberwolves as a team only end with 4 offensive boards, which I think is really impressive considering how large they are as a team. Meanwhile, the Knicks end with 16 offensive rebounds. So, I mean, I think a large part of that is consistent box outs, consistently putting yourself in a situation where the other guy is not going to be able to get those rebounds, just pure dirty work, hustle play stuff. And that was what we got out of Hartenstein this game. On top of, I mean, the 7 points were pretty solid too. The makes that he had, I think he had one of his little floaters, which was nice to see. There was one that if he could have gotten off half a second sooner, he kind of got hot potatoed and it got stuck with the ball late in the shot clock, but he could have had another one of those little floaters that went pretty nicely. Also got to the free throw line 4 times. So I thought it was just a really nice, well-rounded effort from Hartenstein and very impactful, given that as much as we talk about OG had a little bit of a tough time figuring things out at first, but really figured it out late. Like Precious Achiuwa kind of never figured it out in this game and had a pretty tough first go of it at backup center. So Hartenstein playing as well as he did was as necessary could be.
Yeah, I mean, the bucket that stood out to me was the one he got in transition, running the floor. Josh Hart I got him on the hit ahead, and it reminded me of like Mitch's once every 40 games, like cross someone into oblivion and get a dunk somehow. It was a nice finish. Like he went up, like he was going to go for the dunk. Defender was there, switched to the little finger roll. Gorgeous bit of work from Hartenstein. You talked about the defense. I'm going to talk about the playmaking. As essential and as much of like a Mario Kart style booster it's been in the past. Now it feels like a crucial and necessary night-to-night fixture for the Knicks offense. No Emmanuel Quickley, no RJ Barrett. For everything that you gain with OG Anunoby, he's not an on-the-ball advantage creator. I know he's talked about like, all right, well, let's just see how I'm used. And maybe new aspects of his game get explored. He's a smart passer, so I hope that emerges. But right now, there's a lot on the shoulders of Jalen Brunson. There's a lot on the shoulders of Julius Randle, a night where Randle did double the work. Brunson, at least scoring the ball, did none of his usual work or almost none of his usual work. Every extra bit of playmaking feels crucial. And he had a total mind meld with DiVincenzo. He hit Quentin Grimes on maybe my favorite like pass or give and go at least of the year for the Knicks, where Grimes started cutting before Hartenstein even caught the ball, and Hartenstein just immediately whipped it back to him, like Nikola Jokic style ESP between him and Jamal Murray. That was great. And again, it feels so much more important now. And I think the same could be said about Dante DiVincenzo, who in one of my favorite plays of the season from him that wasn't a 3-pointer, had like a brilliant bit of improv where McDaniels almost knocked the ball away. He got it back, live dribble, hit OG. It went off of Karl Anthony Towns' shoulder, so it wasn't a perfect pass, but a no look, hit OG for a dunk. And to me, like in that second quarter spurt that again ultimately went the Knicks' way, the entire quarter, 38-17, that felt like the play that almost broke the camel's back and like gave the Knicks this feeling against this epic defense that, to be clear, like late third, early fourth was bullying the Knicks. It kind of cracked open the door. And I thought DiVincenzo's like pace, both on and off the ball, and him and Jalen Brunson later, like a couple of connections, was just fantastic. And he also got another finish in transition, which we're I guess we're never going to talk about the Pacers and Magic game on this pod. Those two will be lost to history, but that's something that stood out to me over the weekend from DiVincenzo. Like I think his finishing has been a tad better. Had another nice one in transition today.
Yeah, poor Dante. His career high effort
Oh
overshadowed by the
God.
fact that the
Yeah.
game basically didn't matter in
Yeah.
terms of.
Maybe over the summer we'll do like a rewatchables on it. But
Yeah, right. We could be like, all right, let's go appreciate Dante DiVincenzo's career night for once. But yeah, I'm with you. I thought that, I mean, I already mentioned it earlier, but him and Anunoby, I think, are just going to be a super deadly combo together because of how they both play defense and the fact that, they're both deflection machines, but OG is also a guy that you could just strand one-on-one against the other team's best player, and it's totally fine. And actually, it's not him being stranded on them, it's them being stranded with OG Anunoby on them, I
yeah.
think, at that point. But it's like, who's really in danger here? Oh, it's the
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
guy on offense.
I'm in the cell with you. No, you're in the cell with me.
Yeah, exactly. So, the fact that, DiVincenzo plays defense the way that he does, as much as, like, I want to talk about Quentin Grimes in like 2 seconds too, like, he'll
Mhm.
probably be the next player I move things to here, but, you know, just the way that DiVincenzo plays defense jives so well with how OG plays defense that I could see them being a really killer combo together. Now, granted, that's also assuming that if you threw Quentin Grimes out there and he no longer had to be the primary defender on guys like he used to be, which now OG can be, that he wouldn't also get a ton of deflections. But now you can bring that off the bench and you can have Grimes sort of be either of those roles, which is nice. He doesn't have to just be that guy. If he regains his form and turns back into the guy that he was last year, he doesn't just have to be that guy that, like, he's in the 45th minute of a playoff game, on one leg against Jimmy Butler and has to one-on-one man defense him up in the playoffs because that's literally the only option you have on your team at that moment. That's no longer the case, which is great. Which is the sort of thing that OG is going to bring, that's going to bring the best out of guys like DiVincenzo. But let's talk about Quentin Grimes too, because I thought Grimes had an awesome game. So this is his first game since the trade because he wasn't able to play the other night because he was sick. Feeling better today, I guess, and had 10 points, 3 of 4 shooting, 2 of 3 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. And what really impressed me with him, Gavin, is that he started going back to some of the stuff that we love the most about him on offense, which was quick decision making, like quick to attack a closeout and put the ball on the floor. He got inside multiple times in this game, which was super needed. Had a great give and go where he should have gotten a bucket. He should have had 12, maybe 13 points in this game that got called off for some reason because they said the foul was on the floor. I did not understand that one at all. But he got fouled on his way to the hoop on a great give and go, composed himself in midair, even though he bobbled the ball a little bit and managed to still get it in. I mean, just very impressive stuff from him. And really the main thing was just the fact that he looked confident shooting the ball again. And it was a little weird. I almost felt like he was getting frozen out at first. Like Josh Hart had him behind him wide open like 3 times and refused to just like turn his head this way a little bit and kick the ball back to wide open Quentin Grimes in the corner. And I didn't quite understand that. But beyond that, once he started getting more involved in the offense, I really liked what we saw from him in this game. And, he played well on both ends. And I think, even though he can't, again, imperfect stat, as we always say with plus minus, he came out overall a minus in this game at -6. Like, I felt like he did well in his minutes out there. Like, I don't think that's really indicative of his impact. Although I will say, and maybe this will be a good transition for you, but like Deuce a little bit, it's a little worrisome. Like, we could talk about Deuce's extension real quick too, but which we keep kind of, again, another thing that happened over the weekend. It's kind of getting buried here, but that was a little worrisome, and the bench depth is a little worrisome at the moment to me. But Quentin Grimes' play was not worrisome at all. I was very, very encouraged by him.
No, I'm totally with you. I thought he was fantastic on both ends of the floor. I mean, his first bucket was really cool usage that we saw in the playoffs a little bit, but not much in the regular season last year. And that's him screening for Quentin Grimes. And if you remember that Cavs series and a little bit in that Heat series, how effective that was in getting Brunson going on Darius Garland over and over again. And this time they kind of tricked Minnesota, who obviously does incredible scouting, because they were sort of on it, and they just doubled Brunson. And for Grimes, it was almost like a little bit of a ghost screen, and he just rolled out of it right into a wing 3. That was a really neat call from Tom Thibodeau and this offense, and give Grimes credit for being confident and hitting it. And then just his activity level on both sides of the ball. I mean, had a couple of offensive rebounds right after coming to the game. I already mentioned the beautiful give and go. That was basketball pornography for you. That was just beautiful, beautiful stuff. And then hit iHeart on a big cut for a dunk, and what ended up being an and one. But defensively is kind of where I draw the, like, I put the punctuation down. I throw in the highlighter. I add a post-it, like whatever you have to do with Quentin Grimes, because it was a feeding frenzy when him and OG Anunoby were out there. It was just so satisfying to see this team that, for all their toughness, all of Tom Thibodeau's principles, all their effort, at times just simply gets bullied. And to your point, the significance of pushing Grimes down the ladder from the top matchup to the second matchup, I don't think it can be overstated. They were piranhas out there tonight. I was trying to think back, Alex, have I seen this in my lifetime? And maybe like the closest thing I could get to was like rookie Amon Shumpert before the ACL injury, and then a little bit in that 12-13 season where Tyson Chandler was such an incredible anchor. It like gave guys ability to play hyper aggressive. But two perimeter defenders of that caliber, like, it might be the most under-discussed aspect of this trade, at least on our show. I don't know if the other ones did. We didn't get a chance to talk about it because there's just so many fascinating things happening here. But I just think that's another fun one that gets lost in the mix. I mean, those two playing big minutes together in a playoff series, like, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think the reason that it was under-discussed is that it was easy to sort of fade Grimes at this point because things have been so tough for him this year. But all it's going to take is him finding himself, even let's say 90% of what he was when he was so blazing to end last year, like, because he was like next level awesome from like the All-Star break on, especially last year. And finished the year, we talk about all the time, shooting like 50% post All-Star break from three or something like that, and like was just a dynamite defender, was like such a fixture for the Knicks, also stepped up anytime they needed extra scoring, like all this other stuff. And for whatever reason, his confidence seemed to just totally leave him this year. But if he gets back to that level, or even just back to where he was like when he got inserted in the starting lineup last year, the Knicks have two extremely impactful individual and team defenders just that they're able to deploy for that could guard basically, like, Grimes could do anyone 1-3, OG can do anyone 1-4, possibly 5, and then those guys can make up for a ton of mistakes by other people, as well as just create tons of opportunities. Because as much as there are limitations to guys like Jalen Brunson or Dante DiVincenzo or Julius Randle, this team has gotten really, really good at learning how to bottle a guy up on the other team, and then use their intuition to figure out where that ball is going to go and get that hand in there to generate the steal, get that deflection, and then get out there and transition and finish off a play. So the degree to which they're going to be able to do that more with OG and Quentin Grimes is crazy if Grimes is able to figure this out. Let's go to Deuce, though, real quick, because he got a decent amount of burn in the first half and then not much in the second. And I kind of understood why. He looked very uncomfortable out there for whatever reason. I think it's a little bit of a mistake to maybe, I guess, try to throw him in the deep end, like you're a parent trying to teach your kid to swim and just be like, get out there and figure it out, kid. Like, he was the first sub in this game. Like, they literally were like, oh, no more IQ. Like, you're going to have the same exact role as Emmanuel Quickly here and come in like our first sub off the bench. I thought that was a bit of a mistake, and he didn't look comfortable bringing the ball down, initiating the offense, and that's going to remain the biggest issue, I think, for this team now. That was the glaring weakness for all the strengths that they showed and all the new wrinkles they showed. They definitely missed Emmanuel Quickly being able to come in and be that first ball handler off the bench in this game. And as much as I actually really love the new Deuce contract, they're paying him like $4 million a year for the next 3 years after this now, which is great. I think that's a solid price for a guy like that, who's probably your third point guard option or something, ideally. But yeah, I mean, unless the reps work for him and he's able to kind of figure things out, that was kind of concerning for me in this game, just how uncomfortable he looked out there.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on the same page as you. And I saw our guy Benji Ritholtz describe him as more of a wing, like being forced to play point guard right now. And that's kind of his skill set, just because of his height. Like, he's not a natural point guard. He's a solid passer. Like, I still remember like the second game of his rookie year, he had like 11 assists, and that's been pretty much unreplicated since. He's a fine passer. We've seen spurts where he's a really nice shooter. I think the other issue there is that he's gone from being an elite defender a year ago to it feels like he's more of a good defender this season. Like in that Pacers game, it stood out to me that both Nembhard and TJ McConnell were just blowing by him at times. And it's similar to what Prez noted on Quentin Grimes. And you wonder why that happened, why that's happening. And maybe with more minutes, he kind of gets that elite level of defensive play back. And the defense between him, Grimes, and Anunoby for some of those minutes is so good that you just play those three together. And Alan Hine had kind of a throwaway comment that I found interesting. And he was essentially saying like the Knicks have it feel internally that with time, you're going to see Deuce really start shooting it well. And apparently in practice, he's a knockdown shooter. And I totally believe that because we've seen it at the NBA level in short spurts. He's an incredibly good shooter in the G League. But I think it's a confidence thing. And I think it's a situation where, like, if that's going to happen, it's going to be because Tom Thibodeau gives him 12 minutes a game, no matter what. And I just wonder how much they're going to be able to survive him on nights when he's not shooting well and he's not providing elite defense and he can't really play make and he can't totally bring the ball up. What is he giving you at that point? And you're almost going to have to play him like with starter type lineups to make that thing work because you're taking such a big hit losing Emmanuel quickly scoring production already. So I think that's a great point. I can end on this. Jalen Brunson, weird stretch of games for him, 18 of 60 the last 3 games. Like even early in the season, like when he clearly was way off from 2-point range, the threes were still dropping. So the inefficiency never got that bad. I didn't see if he still had it, Alex, the previous 2 games or certainly against, I think it was both the last 2 games, but certainly against the Pacers had a wrap on his right hand and you saw him like airball multiple layups and was trying to go up with 2 hands on the right side or just a left hand on the right side. So there's something off with that right hand. And I'm surprised that's affecting his shot. But, you know, the NBA, especially when you're like 6'0", and I know he's listed 6'2", he's 6'0", and like not hyper athletic. It's one on such short margins. Like I wonder if even something off with his guide hand could be affecting his shot. Had a bunch of in and outs tonight. It's nothing I'm concerned about long term, but I think it's worth noting. And then I think we should just shout out to your point, career high in assists tonight. It's so obvious that he spent this offseason working on that cross court sling pass, and he pulled it off like to Anunoby, to DiVincenzo, like over and over and over again. And particularly like having Anunoby again, one of the best corner 3-point shooters on planet Earth. Like it's so crucial that Brunson has that pass in his arsenal. And it's clear that as much as we talk about the 3-point shooting, the playmaking is a big step up in his game this year. And if he had hit shots at like a semi-normal rate tonight, like this isn't a close game down the stretch. The Knicks blow out the best team in the West, which is pretty just incredible in OG's first game.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'll just end on 2 last notes myself. First, Josh Hart still does not work as a shooting guard. So I hope that Tibbs gets rid of that soon. That was part of what was killing the Knicks down the stretch of this game was Tibbs's insistence on playing Hart at the shooting guard. Even if you have Anunoby out there who's a better shooter and everything else, it was not working. And I think he's got to keep Hart's minutes to being a 3-4 hybrid, and that's it. And that's got to sort of be his role. And if he's not able to play in a situation where he's against like the big man on the other team, then maybe just play DiVincenzo and Grimes. You know, you have other options on the team. I don't understand what the insistence was on playing Josh Hart in that way down the stretch of this game. My final thing is just like a fantasy lineup building that I think would be really cool. Yeah. I cannot wait till we at some point get to see, I don't know if this is a guarantee given how Tibbs runs rotations, but I feel like a Brunson, DiVincenzo, Grimes, Anunoby, Hartenstein lineup would be really fun, and I hope we get to see that at some point. I was thinking about that while we were seeing Anunoby play with Grimes and Anunoby play with DiVincenzo. I'm like, what if all 3 of those guys were out there at once with your best shot creator and your defensive anchor at center? Could be pretty nasty. Maybe the Knicks' own little version of like a death lineup, although it's hilarious to say that on like not include Julius Randle in a lineup on a night where he literally won the Knicks the game. But either way, that's all for today. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back with some more game recaps this week, 2 more games for the Knicks, and also I'm sure plenty of more OG Anunoby talk. So until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Peace out, everybody.